Bobby Mercer, my last words on that telecast of July 24th were the Yankees have won the ball game 4-3. Whether you agreed with me or not, I don't really remember. But, as you know, we sort of fouled that one up, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to try to straighten it out tonight. The Yankees did not win the ball game 4-3. Late President Lincoln ruled it was a legal home run by George Brett, and that's why we're here at Yankee Stadium tonight to pick up this game in the top half of the ninth inning. With 2 outs. And the Royals now leading 5-4.
Order up!
Ruling by a fair judge by the American League office, they decided that, well, his say was the number one say, so here we are today to finish this ball game.
What are you boys watching?
Burlesque.
It looks like baseball to me.
Yeah, the baseball game ended a month ago.
Are you guys Yankee fans?
No, we're from Kansas City.
No kidding. What are you guys doing in town?
The circus.
Like Barnum and Bailey?
Billy and George.
Hey, is that you?
Yeah.
Cut!
Circle that.
Wardrobe.
Good job, by the way, Dan. It
Right.
was
No.
technical, as we say.
I felt it.
So is this for the DVD extras or something?
iTunes extras.
God, remember when movies actually came in a box? Now they're just really long cat videos. Okay, hi, I'm David Kechter, and we are here on the set of Tar Wars. It's a movie I'm directing, and I have been pushing to make for a long time. We're gonna go again. That was a little too tight. Since I was a kid, I've been a huge Royals fan, and so I've always been fascinated by the Pine Tar game. And action! I've always hoped that one day I would get to make a movie about it. Most people have never heard the full story of what happened with George Brett and the Yankees back in 1983. It's so much stranger and more interesting than you might think. Did we give them scripts or no? Can I see the sides?
Obviously, David's known better for his work as an actor in movies and TV. You probably saw him in Anchorman, The Office, but he is a diehard Royals fan, and I don't think there's a man that's more qualified to direct Tar Wars.
If any fans of the Royals or Yankees are watching, I think you might want to sit down for this one. It has just been announced that Tar Wars, the story of George Brett's fabled Pine Tar game from back in 1983, will be released into theaters this October. Production is already underway, and the project's already attracting major awards buzz. David Koechner is set to make his directorial debut.
Good job, guys. We're gonna go again. What most people don't realize is that the Pine Tar game was more like a Pine Tar month. It spanned for 25 days. And it featured an incredible cast of characters because you've got George Brett, you've got Yankees manager Billy Martin, you've got the owner of the Yankees, the boss, George Steinbrenner, hell, and even Roy Cohn gets involved. Now, at the heart of the story is George Brett. In 1983, Brett was already in his 11th season with the Royals. He'd batted over 300 for 6 of the last 7 seasons.
This ball may be out of here. It is. Listen to this crowd.
He'd been an all-star for 7 straight years, including 2 batting titles in 1976 and in 1980. So the guy was good. He was not good. He was great. But he's also a crazy competitor. So we needed an actor who could convey both the confidence of George Brett and his desperate need to win. You are George Brett, all right? So get in his head a little bit, and I want you to give his Hall of Fame speech.
You know, when me and my 3 brothers were growing up in El Segundo, if you'd have said to my dad that your son is going to be a Hall of Famer, he would have said, hell yeah. Oh, Ken's going to be in the Hall of Fame. But maybe if you'd have told him that George would be put in a headlock on national television, he would have said, yeah, sure, I believe that.
That's good.
I've met David before, and he said, I always wanted to be a baseball player, and I said, I always wanted to be a actor. When he said he wanted to direct or produce this movie, I was a little bit shocked, and then I asked him if I could play myself, and he says, George, you have no acting ability. And so that hurt my feelings a little bit.
Playing Brett is wild.
I mean, I wouldn't have even touched it.
This guy, he plays 21 seasons in the majors, and still, somehow, the thing that he might be best known for was having too much pine tar on his bat during a regular season game in July. I mean, There are only 4 players ever to get 3,000 hits, 300 home runs, and bat 300 over the course of their career. It's Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, Stan Musial, and George Pine Tar Brett.
Adapting a book like The Pine Tar Game has been awesome. I mean, as a screenwriter, you couldn't ask for better material. Take Yankees owner George Steinbrenner, who bought the Bronx Bombers in 1973.
They come out because they love us or they hate us. There's nothing in between with the Yankees.
This is a guy who went through 13 publicity directors in his first 26 years with the Yankees, who changed managers 20 times in his first 23 years. And there was no better example of Steinbrenner's volatility than his relationship with Billy Martin, the Yanks manager in '83.
That isn't the way we say it, George. I have the right to call you in the dugout anytime
That's not the way it's going to be, George.
Well, you're damn right it is, and if you don't like it, you're fired.
You haven't hired me yet.
The league's always supported the umpires, and all of a sudden they throw the rule book out? They're just doing this because we're the Yankees. What's that old saying? It's all right to cheat as long as you don't get caught?
Believe it or not, this wasn't Martin's first time managing the Yankees. During his first go, he won the World Series. But his feuds with Jackson and Steinbrenner eventually led to his resignation in 1978. He was back in 1979, but got fired at the end of the season for punching out a marshmallow salesman in a Minneapolis hotel.
But in '83, Martin was back for the 3rd time managing the Yankees. So there's no question the Pine Tar incident never even happens if anyone else is managing the Yankees.
Hey, I think I'll try a swig of this.
Billy, will you use a spoon?
Oh, no!
Okay, right now, anytime? Okay. I'm Philip Bondi. I literally wrote the book, The Pine Tar Game, and that's why they brought me on to be a consultant for this film. Hey, guys.
Great to meet you.
You guys are supposed to hate each other.
Yeah, well, we do.
People forget that this was the actual rivalry of the late 70s, not the Yankees-Red Sox, the Yankees-Royals.
That's gone. Chris Chambliss has won the American League pennant for the New York Yankees.
They played each other 4 times in 5 years in the ALCS, and each one seemed more dramatic than the last one.
Brett went in hard, and both teams are out on the field.
I threw a haymaker. First inning of the last game of the playoffs. That's rivalry.
These things just kept escalating, and the hatred, particularly from the Royals' point of view, was intense. I mean, here was this team, the Yankees, standing in their way, the big city guys who just kept ending the dreams of the smaller city.
And the Yankees have won the pennant.
They were New York, we're Kansas City. They thought their didn't stink, and we knew ours did.
It wasn't until their 4th matchup that David finally beat Goliath, and it was George Brett's bat that did it.
High drive and deep to right field. It is gone. 3-run home run by George Brett and a stunned crowd here at Yankee Stadium in New York.
It was, at that time, the greatest thrill I have ever had in my life, without a doubt.
So it was this rivalry that kind of set the stage for the Pine Tar Game.
Coming up on Making of Tar Wars.
This thing was practically the Watergate of baseball, and we wanted to make a movie that was just as big.
This bat looks like it's more pine tar than it is bat.
What are you idiots gonna do with 50 cans of pine tar?
We are at war, Kenny.
It's high drama. It's one incident that became kind of a cultural phenomenon.
You want to do a rehearsal?
What are you guys doing in town?
The Pine Tar Game has to rank among the most memorable events in baseball history. And that's why I wanted to make a movie about it.
This is far from ridiculous.
They're just doing this because we're the Yankees.
Camera.
And we'll show you the highlights when we return.
Hey, Kev, have you seen the trailer of the new Pine Tar movie?
No. Is it any good?
Yeah, it's really good.
In baseball, the game is not over, as they say, until the final out.
If they call me out for having too much pine tar, I'm gonna kill some.
George Brett apparently put the Royals ahead. Billy Martin said he used the
only thing I remember is George Brett being called out.
Well, baseball isn't so simple
This
anymore.
had changed the pennant race.
Brett's bat had too much pine tar.
Relax, okay? It's just pine tar.
Are they trying to say I corked the bat? I wouldn't even know how to cork a bat.
We're in New York, George.
Rules are the rules for a reason.
Billy Martin's the king of all clowns.
This is illegal from a mile away.
Now the rules don't mean anything. This is a war, Kenny. This is a war.
You guys Yankee fans?
They ought to call the rule book the funny pages.
So you're saying the bat wasn't illegal?
Mr. Cook, why do you think the game should be postponed?
Your Honor, this is ridiculous. This is far from ridiculous.
They cheated us. McPhail changed the rules against us.
Are you threatening Lee McPhail?
What are you idiots gonna do with 50 cans of pine tar?
Play ball.
Here's the culprit, a substance known as pine tar. But what's all the commotion about? Does it really help the batter?
It wasn't until the mid-60s that pine tar became the substance of choice.
Pine tar is used in baseball and tree surgery. It is a sticky, gooey sap which bonds hands wet with perspiration to the handle of a bat. The fact is, Jerry, pine tar is just about the stickiest stuff you can find.
George Brett was one of the few players who actually didn't use batting gloves, so of course he loved pine tar.
That's just a sticky substance that you put on a rag, and then you rub the rag on the bat, put it up there, you get a little pine tar. Now the bat won't slip out of your hands.
But there was a major league rule about pine tar. When the substance started to be used prevalently in baseball, a stingy owner of the Washington Senators, Calvin Griffith, thought that baseballs were getting dirty prematurely and it was costing him money.
He lobbied intensely to make this rule that pine tar above the 18-inch mark would be illegal.
Griffith succeeded and Rule 1.10b was in the books. But that didn't stop people like George Brett from pushing the limits of bat cleanliness.
People knew about Brett's pine tar just because he was a pine tar slob. He was a bat slob.
I was a bat slob. My bats weren't pretty. It's a weapon. I'm going to war with it. I'm going to war.
Brett would use a bat for like 3 or 4 weeks and apply pine tar to the handle 3 or 4 times a day. And apparently he used so much that the pine tar would actually start to grow inside the grain of the bat.
I'm back with Quentin Kirby, star of Tar Wars. So we usually don't do this on the show, but I heard you have a clip from the movie. So what are we going to see here?
Right. So in this scene, George Brett is actually having a conversation with a Royals staffer, and they're in the batting cages. It's just a few days before the infamous Yankees game. And the staffer actually confronts George with a bat that he's a little bit more than worried about.
All right, so let's see a scene. Check it out from Tar Wars.
Hey, George, you got a sec?
What?
This bat looks like it's more pine tar than it is bat.
Watch it, Dean. It's my favorite one.
Damn it, George. You're not gonna get away with this bat for too much longer.
Relax, okay? It's just pine tar.
At least if you fill this thing up with cork, nobody would notice. But this thing? This is illegal from a mile away.
If it was filled with cork, I'd be worried. But nobody gives a damn about a little bit of pine tar. What are they gonna do, make me clean it in the middle of a game?
People are starting to notice, George. Other managers are starting to notice.
You really think managers are noticing? Come on, man. No ump is gonna waste his time calling something so stupid.
You want to put $100 on that?
I'll give you $100 right now if you let me take a swing.
All right, look, I'm just watching out for you, George. We have plenty of other T85s.
Like that one.
That was the best bat I've ever seen in my life. It was 8 grains, and the thicker the grain, the more knots, the harder the wood. And that was the best bat that I've ever used.
Of course, someone eventually noticed the pine tar. 2 weeks earlier, a Yankees third baseman, Greg Nettles, had seen the pine tar in Brett's bat when the Yankees were in Kansas City. Now, Nettles knew a little bit about illegal bats. He'd been caught using one filled with Super Balls in '74.
And if you remember, Brett and Nettles had sparred at third base in the 1977 ALCS. So there was some bad blood there.
So Nettles tells Martin about it, and Martin put that knowledge aside for a time when he thought it might be a little bit more useful, a moment when it could turn the tide of the game.
From Yankee Stadium in the Bronx, New York, today the New York Yankees take on the Kansas City Royals.
Cut to July 24th, 1983. Now, this is a crucial part of the film. It is also a big, expensive set piece that we have to get right.
Here's a wide shot of Yankee Stadium, which will be how we enter the scene. It's actually the final game of the season between the Yanks and the Royals.
It was very much a tale of two different teams at that point. The Yankees were still miraculously in the pennant race, whereas the Royals had faded already. But they still were within some striking distance, the Royals, simply because they were in a weaker division.
And at the end of 8, it's the Yankees 4, the Royals 3.
Well, the first 8 innings went normally. With 2 outs in the top of the 9th, the Yanks were up 4-3, but UL Washington managed to hit a grounder that got him to first.
What a big base hit by UL Washington, and the reason for that is it brings up George Brett.
And that single brought Billy Martin to the mound, and he called for Goose Gossage to come in.
Gossage was a fireballing 9-time All-Star and future Hall of Famer with a signature handlebar mustache.
That's who he wants, and it will be Gossage.
I mean, this was back in the era of bullpen cars. A lot of guys would have pitched around Brett, not Goose.
All right, here's the challenge. Brett with the bat and Gossage with the ball.
We were all thinking he's going to pitch carefully to Brett. He didn't, because that wasn't Gossage.
Foul. And both Gossage and I can heave a sigh of relief.
His second pitch, Gossage said, I was trying to bury this pitch right in his neck. But it didn't work out that way.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. It's gone.
Running around the bases, I'm going, I can't believe I just did that. This is unbelievable.
The crowd completely silences at Yankee Stadium, and there you have it. We thought it was pretty much over for the Yankees at that point. Suddenly, Billy Martin clambers out of the dugout.
Guys are pointing at me. They're going, look, what's Billy Martin? I'm going, well, what the hell's he doing out there?
He starts pointing at the bat.
George Brett has just homered, and Billy Martin and the Yankees want the bat.
And we're wondering what the heck is going on down there.
And the umpires are going to get together. George Brett looking around, wanting to know what's going on.
Imagine thinking that you just hit a game-winning home run off of your bitter rivals, and then you see a guy like Billy Martin up there talking to the umps, waving your bat around. You'd be ready to lose your mind, too.
Look at Martin.
Well, what they're talking about, Frank, is that he's got too much pine tar.
I said, what do you mean too much pine tar?
Billy Martin's a persuasive guy, especially when he's screaming bloody murder in your face. So umpire Tim McClelland and his crew decided to talk it over.
Now the umpires are going to walk away and talk about this and go over the rules.
What the hell's going on, Frank? Are they trying to say I corked the bat? I wouldn't even know how to cork a bat.
Man, I think it's about the pine tar. I'm pretty sure something like this happened to John Mayberry 10 years ago.
You gotta be kidding me. I mean, you don't think this is serious, do you?
We're in New York, George. Billy's out there yelling at the umps. Dick Hauser's still sitting in here on the bench.
If they call me out for having too much pine tar, I'm gonna kill somebody. I mean, it wouldn't have even touched it.
I just don't think we have a chance. Look at Billy out there. It's like a mad dog.
This is classic Yankees. They can't possibly bear to think that somebody's better than they are. Wait, is McClellan coming over here?
What? Yes, sir. Brett is out. Look at this. Brett is out. And
his team is back.
He is out and having to be forcibly restrained from hitting plate umpire Tim McClellan.
That's the most famous tantrum in baseball history, and maybe in all sports, I think.
Well, Joe Brinkman, one of the umpires, he doesn't know what I'm going to do, so he grabs me from behind, and I'm going really ballistic now, because I don't know who's got me.
When Brett was running out of the dugout, he was screaming obscenities at the umpire because that's what you do in a situation like this. And Brett was mostly saying that's and that's it was immediately grounds for ejection.
Obviously, I wasn't going to hit him. I was going to go and do my best Billy Martin, Earl Weaver, Whitey Herzog impersonation, get in their face and start screaming at them.
And the Yankees have won the ball game 4-3. Brett is called out for using an illegal bat. Bobby, I've never seen this in my life.
Everybody now in the stands is having the time of their lives because this was an amazing gift.
Gaylord Perry just took the bat away from home plate umpire Jim McClellan. They're going to take it so they cannot take it into the American League office.
Gaylord Perry, he decided that if he got rid of the bat, there would be no proof, no evidence, and that the Royals could appeal this easier.
All these people are running through the dugout, and they're trying to get the bat so they can send it to Lee MacPhail.
Well, a Yankees security person and one of the umpires quickly are chasing whoever has the bat.
The umpires send people in to retrieve the bat, and eventually they got the bat back.
Because there were already 2 outs, that also meant that Brett was the last out and that the game was over, making this, as Brett would later observe, the first and last time that anybody would ever hit a game-losing home run.
It was a day that I'll never forget.
Guys, you heard that Hollywood is releasing a film based on the George Brett pine tar incident, and it begs the question, I guess I have to ask, was George Brett's post-ejection tantrum one of the most epic we've ever seen in sports?
Of course it was. I mean, how George Brett wasn't arrested for this eludes me to this day. Pine tar game and the aftermath is one of the strangest situations in the history of Major League Baseball.
After George Brett's game-losing home run and his legendary outbursts, both teams were trying to understand what had just happened.
By the time I get in the locker room, Dick Hauser, our manager, he's pissed. And he's pissed at me for using an illegal bat.
Meanwhile, Billy Martin is loving life.
Coach, Dick Hauser just compared the call to the Brinks robbery. What do you say then?
I mean, of course I would have argued the call if I was in Dick Hauser's shoes. That's a manager's job. You got to stand up for your boys. But I would have accepted it too, that's for sure.
So, Billy, you would have appealed the call?
The rules are the rules for a reason.
What about Goose's pitch? Were you surprised that Brett was able to make contact?
What pitch? The only thing I remember is George Brett being called out. This has turned out to be a pretty wonderful Sunday, hasn't it, boys?
Billy Martin was in his absolute glory. He had won a game by trickery. He had outfoxed the world. This had changed the pennant race, you know? He had stolen a game.
In baseball, the game is not over, as they say, until the final out, even if it's a home run.
It was probably the strangest ending in the history of baseball. The last out was a home run by the losing team.
Kansas City Royals third baseman George Brett, he is perhaps still fuming this morning over one of the most bizarre incidents of this baseball season.
I've used the bat for so long, and I've got broken bats above my locker whose pine tar is maybe 1 inch over the limit. No one's ever said a damn word.
Brett had a pretty good point. He said that he'd hit the home run about 29 inches from the bottom of the bat, where there was no way that the ball could have touched the pine tar, and he was right, but that wasn't the rule. Of course, nobody was quite sure what the rule actually was.
Everybody was quickly looking through a rule book.
According to the rule book, Rule 1.10b, a bat may not be covered by such a substance more than 18 inches from the top of the handle.
So the 18 inches part was pretty clear, but no one knew if Brett should have been called out for it.
The rule that seems to be most crucial is 606.
All those rules together or separately could be interpreted either way, so it was very confusing.
The Royals are back home in Kansas City, trying to forget that just 24 hours ago they got the tar knocked out of them in New York. Meanwhile, the bat is being held incommunicado at the league office in New York pending an investigation.
The Royals were already planning their appeal to AL President Lee MacPhail.
Kansas City has an assistant director of scouting development named Dean Taylor. Now, this guy was a rules nerd.
He looked at the rule book very closely, and he made an argument saying what should have happened was the bat should have been taken out of play, period, end of question.
So I think it was Dean Taylor who took that information to our general manager at the time, John Scherholz, so they could begin devising their protest to the AL office in Lee MacPhail.
But you have to remember that there was a real sense of drama to what Taylor and Scherholz were doing. Could they possibly convince the league to overrule their own umpires and reverse such an important call?
Billy Martin's the king of all clowns. This is an embarrassment to the sport. George Brett says he'll quit if he's suspended.
You really think he'll quit?
No, of course not. What's George Brett gonna do without baseball? Sell ribs at Arthur Bryant's? Explain it to me one more time.
They clearly mixed up 1.10b with 606.
In English. So you're saying the bat wasn't illegal?
The bat was illegal, but the ball hadn't been struck illegally.
Here's the key point. Because the bat hadn't been removed before the hit, it wasn't an illegal bat until the umps looked at it after the hit, meaning Brett's home run wasn't an illegally batted ball. At least that's what Taylor and Sherholtz were arguing.
Together, they wrote an appeal, and you can tell from the appeal, the first half is written by Dean Taylor because it's very formal and it cites very specific rules, and then the second half is written by Sherholtz because it attacks Billy Martin.
Clearly, the intent of Rule 1.10b states...
Type it all in caps. In conclusion, it's our position that the combination of Billy Martin's incomplete knowledge and comprehension of the official baseball rules above and his foreboding and intimidating manner created confusion in the minds of the umpires who misinterpreted the intent and spirit of these same rules.
You seriously want me to say that?
Sure do. Fax it.
I'm gonna mail a copy too. Taylor and Sherholtz sent their appeal to the American League, where President Lee MacPhail had to decide who was right, the Royals or his umpires.
Topping the sports news this Thursday morning is American League President Lee MacPhail. Today, he'll announce his decision on the Kansas City Royals protest over George Brett's disallowed home run against the New York Yankees.
It was very hard for Lee MacPhail to deal with this because, generally speaking, the league president, the commissioner of baseball, they're supposed to back up the umpires. He was also, the former president of the New York Yankees. So he knew Steinbrenner very well. He also knew what this ruling would do to Steinbrenner.
So what you have here is a situation where the AL president would have to decide if it was worth undermining not only his own officials, but also his former team, all for the sake of the rules. It definitely did not seem likely.
Thank you, Bob. I have a decision here. It is the position of this office that the umpire's interpretation, while technically defensible, is not in accord with the intent or spirit of the rules, and that the rules do not provide that a hitter be called out for excessive use of pine tar. The protest of the Kansas City Club is therefore upheld, and the home run by Brett is permitted to stand.
One of the most dramatic reversals in the history of baseball, maybe in all sports. The American League made the final call today and gave its umpires an era.
All I was doing was my job, and I did my job correctly.
We've opened a Pandora's box now. Every rule in baseball is subject not only to what it says in black and white, but to interpretation.
I'm very proud of Lee. I didn't think Lee would have the guts to do it, but I'm very proud of his decision.
He had an honest opinion, and that opinion was that it was wrong to steal a home run from somebody when the pine tar had nothing to do with it.
The league settles on the date of August 18 to restart the game as if Brett's home run had stood. The Royals would be up 5-4 in the top of the ninth inning with 2 outs.
So on a muggy city day stickier than the pine tar that started this whole mess, the smoking gun is deemed not to be smoking, the murder weapon is deemed incapable of having fired the shot, and George Brett's home run counts.
We knew Steinbrenner would absolutely go berserk over this.
Let's get the Yankee point of view now from the principal owner of the New York Yankees, Mr. George Steinbrenner.
Good morning, Brian. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
I'm wearing these glasses because I've been crying. I don't want the people to see my eyes.
A new baseball film, Tar Wars, is set for release next month. And early indications are that Keenan Johnston delivers a show-stopping performance in David Koechner's film.
Lee MacPhail is not a scientist. Lee MacPhail is not a chemist. Now get out of here. Oh, wait, one more thing. Now the rules don't mean anything. It's all about the spirit of the sport. Whatever that means. I tell you what, I want all the players to play in their diapers. That's in the spirit of Lee MacPhail's sport. Now go. Ken, I want you to have an intern dig up every bad trade that Lee MacPhail made when he was general manager of the New York Yankees. Why? He traded Roger Maris for Charlie Smith. I want to know what other bonehead decisions he made. This is a war, Kenny. This is a war. Steinbrenner actually did have an intern look up all of the bad trades that MacPhail had made when he was GM of the Yankees.
I'm sure Steinbrenner was furious. I'm sure Billy Martin was furious, and I'm sure the Yankee organization was really pissed. As time creeped towards the resumption, it was becoming more and more obvious that the situation and the resumption was tangibly affecting the team during this period.
The Pine Tar situation had set the team on edge, especially the manager.
Billy, you still think the rule book doesn't mean anything after MacPhail's decision?
They ought to call the rule book the funny pages.
He starts talking about how the world is against him. It had stolen his moment of genius.
He's a crew chief. He couldn't be chief of a one-man Indian tribe.
Billy Martin was already a little unhinged before this happened. And now Lee MacPhail makes this ruling, and it pushes him right over the edge.
They cheated us. MacPhail changed the rules against us.
The Yankees did seem to lose a little bit of control over everything that was happening in relationship to the Pine Tar game. From the other side, it was kind of fun to see.
The Yankees were running out of options. Nearly a month of drama now looked like it would end with 4 outs in the Bronx. But Steinbrenner got thrown a life preserver.
Well, baseball isn't so simple anymore, and litigation now seems to be America's favorite sport.
At the heart of the latest flap over the Pine Tar game is a suit filed by 3 young fans who contend they should not be forced to pay for another ticket to see the conclusion of a game they've already paid to see once.
This was the same day that the game was supposed to be resumed at 6 p.m.
Enter 14-year-old Lawrence Morrison. He sued because the Yankees wanted to charge all but season ticket holders $2.50 to watch the game completed.
We'll find out whether a New York State Supreme Court judge will issue a temporary injunction to delay the final 4 outs.
Now, while the lawsuit seemed ridiculous, the Bronx Supreme Court agreed to hear it. Now, to piggyback on this momentum, this is where the story gets nice and weird, because the Yankees bring in possibly the oddest person that could have joined this scenario, Roy Cohn.
Communists in the United States have behind them the military might of almost 1/2 the world.
Roy Cohn, the famous commie hunter and McCarthy-era attorney, did some work for the Yankees, and this was one of the times that George Steinbrenner asked Roy Cohn to help him.
Never mess with Roy Cohn.
As long as a few people believe it.
What an incredibly complex guy. He was indicted multiple times by 1983, was on the verge of being disbarred. But you know, when George Steinbrenner called in a favor, Roy Cohn showed up in 2 separate courtrooms to represent the Yankees.
Well, even though the lawsuits about ticket prices that had been filed were technically all against the Yankees, the team supported them because they'd lead to an injunction preventing the game from being played until the suits could be resolved. But in court, Roy Cohn, he was running with a different argument.
Roy Cohn said, yeah, we can't assure that this game will be played safely. If you resume this game, we can't guarantee that the fans won't riot. Roy Cohn was famous for one thing above all else: delay, 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 stall, stall, stall. And that was the idea. He would continue to stall and hope that the day would pass.
Mr. Cohn, why do you think the game should be postponed?
Now, the Yankees' ticket policy is mandated by the league, and so it should be in the league's best interests as well to see this injunction issued until the details can be ironed out. Moreover, due to the sudden and extraordinary circumstances surrounding this resumption, the New York Yankees cannot possibly guarantee the safety of the fans, since the team will have only 1/4 of the usual security detail present. And what with the tremendous and sensational press this resumption has generated, the stadium could be overrun with unruly attendees who aren't even baseball fans. This could become a dangerous situation. At 11:30 a.m., the first judge in the Bronx actually issued an injunction stopping the game.
They somehow found a judge who was such a Yankee fan that he found in favor of the Yankees.
But MacPhail had declared the day before that if the first judge issued an injunction, the league would immediately appeal. Now that meant the Royals took off from Kansas City at noon, unsure of whether they'd play that night, and the lawyers moved to the Manhattan Appellate Court to argue the case for a second time.
Now remember, at this point, when the case is about to begin, the game is about to start in a few hours. It's high drama.
I resent any statements from the league that the Yankees are responsible for this. The continuing reference to the fact that this was somehow inspired by us is an outright falsehood.
Your Honor, this is ridiculous.
This is far from ridiculous. We didn't bring these cases, we're being sued. And if just one person gets hurt, it isn't worth it. The stadium could erupt in a riot.
I'm not surprised to hear this kind of hyperbole from you, Mr. Cohn. I'm ruling in favor of the American League to lift the injunction and go ahead with the 9th inning. Play ball.
The judge literally said that. Play ball.
Now, finally, for the first time in 25 days, the 9th inning was definitely going to be played.
When the Royals decided to head to Yankee Stadium, they get there, I don't know, around 4:15, and at that moment, that's when they finally find out, hey, you guys are playing at 6. Well, George Brett didn't.
Where is Brett?
I don't really know.
Let's take a look at the Yankees' defensive alignment right now, which may furnish you a surprise or two. Ken Griffey is at first base.
Is that you?
Don Mattingly is at second base.
What are you doing here? Why aren't you at the stadium?
Well, you just can't get good spaghetti and meatballs at Yankee Stadium.
I'm so confused.
I was kicked out of that game a month ago.
That's right. George Brett, the man who swung the pine tar bat, the man who put this whole thing into motion. He spent the replay of the 9th inning at an Italian restaurant near the Newark airport watching the game with the Royals TWA rep.
Well, there's a lot of hype. We're revving up for the anticipation of this film, but I do have another thing to ask you. What is it that I hear about this 747?
Yeah, the plane, right. Well, it's just a great example of what you just said, that this movie's getting a lot of hype. It's getting the attention it deserves because it really is going to be phenomenal.
Let's get it over with.
Maybe one of the shortest games on record.
No, it's the longest game. It's been going on for 2 months.
We should not be at this ballpark today.
And Lee McPhail should be pine-tarred and feathered.
Even aside from everything that had happened over the past 25 days, the resumption was strange.
As you know, we sort of fouled that one up, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to try to straighten it out tonight. The Yankees did not win the ball game 4-3.
Composing music for the replay of the 9th inning has been one of the best parts of scoring Tar Wars. It's just such a weird moment.
And there's the crowd here tonight.
Only 1,245 fans showed up. Martin treated it like it was some kind of joke.
He decided, if they're gonna make me do this, I'm gonna make them pay for it by turning it into a total farce.
Let's take a look at the Yankees' defensive alignment right now, which may furnish you a surprise or two.
Martin started his ace pitcher, Ron Guidry, in center field.
That's Guidry playing center.
Don Mattingly had been moved from first base to second, marking what is still the last time a lefty played second base.
And on the mound for the Yankees, right-hander George Frazier, and he'll be pitching to Hal McRae, who was on deck when Brett hit the 2-run homer.
Martin still had one last trick up his sleeve.
Oh, wait a minute, and a field play to first base.
Well,
and disallowed, and here comes Martin.
Well, we must tell this. These are not the same umpiring crew that was here before. Or they're going to appeal to second base now.
Smalley steps on second, and again the
Billy
field
Martin's
is disallowed.
coming out of the dugout.
All right, now Billy can come out and say, wait a minute, fellas, how do you know that Brett touched second base because you were not here?
That's right.
McPhail's chief advisor, Bob Fischel, he prepared an affidavit that was signed by every member of the original umpire crew.
Remarkably, he guessed this in advance. And he guessed that Billy Martin would appeal, and out of the pocket of umpire Dave Phillips came an affidavit testifying that George Brett and UL Washington had stepped on all 4 bases.
So we add just a little more drama to the infamous Pine Tar game.
That was basically checkmate. Lee McPhail wins, Billy Martin loses. Then, of course, Billy Martin swallowed his pride and managed the rest of the game like a pro. No, I'm just kidding. He left before the game was even over.
Hey, Billy, the reporters are outside.
Tell him I'm watching Barney Miller.
So you want me to tell him you're not going to talk to the press?
No. Tell him I'm watching Barney Miller. Billy Martin did not finish managing the game. In the middle of the 9th inning, he left the dugout, went into the clubhouse, and actually did watch a rerun of the cop show Barney Miller.
And that may do it. Frank White over to John Wathen, and the Pine Tar game is over. The final score, the Kansas City Royals 5 and the New York Yankees 4, I think.
That was it. The Royals won. George Brett's game-winning homer became the game-losing homer, and then was turned back into the game-winning homer. 25 days of controversy came to an end in 9 minutes and 41 seconds without a single hit.
The Pine Tar game is over with. Now, I'm not going to answer any more questions about the Pine Tar game. It's over with.
It's the end to one of the craziest ball games ever played.
I thought it added a human dimension into the game of baseball, and I enjoyed it.
You won. That also helps you enjoy it.
Absolutely, but like those wins.
But the man who started the Pine Tar protest stayed out of sight and out of the locker room long after the game.
Mr. Martin, any comments tonight?
I'm glad it's finally over. I hate to take a loss like that on a ruling and everything, but you know, there's been a lot of media coverage, everything, and it just seems like it may have distracted a little bit.
That ruling took the heart out of that team, just sent them on a tailspin, and they fell pretty quickly out of the pennant race.
Even with their moral and literal victory in the Pine Tar incident, the Royals didn't make the playoffs that year. But in 1985, the franchise would win its first ever World Series.
When it came time in 1999 to vote for George Brett on the Hall of Fame, these guys said, "Oh, you remember that Pine Tar thing? He was pretty passionate about the sport." So I think it's really one of the greatest things that's ever happened in my life.
In sports, when we come upon something that we have never, ever seen before, not only that, but something that we couldn't have imagined, that makes it special. And this was something we could never have imagined.
Regardless of who won or lost, the Pine Tar game matters. There are 162 games in a baseball season. That's a lot of innings, a lot of at-bats, and a lot of pitches. One time, back in 1983, a bunch of people cared so much about the rules and reputation of the sport that they spent a month trying to figure out how much pine tar you can have on a bat. So, there's something beautiful about that. It's something pure. And that's why I wanted to make a movie about it. I mean, you know, it seems stupid to spend this much time obsessing over such a small and trivial detail, but it isn't stupid. It's baseball.
Fans and cinephiles alike, Christmas came early today.
Talking Tar Wars.
Well, the reviews are in.
And they suggest we're looking at a future classic.
Bull Durham, The Natural, Field of Dreams. There's a long list of classic baseball movies.
Tar Wars hits a home run.
What are you idiots gonna do with 50 cans of pine tar? Glue each other to the left of your wall?
It just opened #1 at the box office, and I saw it this weekend. I mean, it's an incredible movie.